Hey folks, Mark here, Lighthouse Law Club and Monaco Management Group. Coming to you today from a very interesting place in Eastern Europe. I want to talk today about commercial liens, the monetization of commercial liens. I already have two messages. One will be directly towards those who have already perfected instruments, perfected processes that are complete. Defaulted notices of default have gone on, notice of default absolute have gone out, and you've perfected the process. You're sitting on these affidavits of obligation and you really don't know what to do with them. All right, I've spent the better part of today and yesterday dealing with private wealth management managers in the private banking sector. Yesterday I spent the better part of the day with the head of a large brokerage group that's owned by the largest bank in this country. And I'm very pleased to say that we have some very good news as it relates to the monetization of commercial liens. All right, let's first back up a step and just kind of clarify some of our terminology here so everyone's on the same page. All right, an affidavit of obligation is not necessarily a commercial lien. A lien is a claim on assets, a lawful or legal claim on assets once you've made that claim official, whether that be public or private. Okay? So an affidavit of obligation is a statement of liability. And that statement of liability does not become a lien unless or until you use commercial processes to make that claim, to lodge that claim as a matter of public notice. Okay, there's a couple ways of doing that. So let's just clarify that terminology. I know we use the term commercial lien pretty loosely, but it's not a lien until it's actually the claim has been filed against the assets of the person who's liable. Now, a little bit of history. I recommend that you watch the videos that I've done on the Montana Freeman. There's two videos on the Montana Freeman on our YouTube page. I highly recommend you watch those to get an understanding of really how this whole process started evolving. These gentlemen studied very closely under and with Hartford Van Dyke. And to make a long story short, they were very successful in converting their commercial liens into securitized instruments that were being paid by the Treasury. That's quite interesting. And they were very successful in not only getting debts discharged, but also making the warrant drafts against those liens in amounts in excess of what was actually owed, and the people using them were getting refunds. Now, naturally, when you put banking into the hands of the private people, it scares the bejesus out of the central bankers and just the power structure in general. These liens started to be thrown around against public officials for violations of their oath of office and untold damages. And they were scared to death. So this commercial lien or affidavit of obligation process became politically incorrect pretty quickly. Okay, I know for a fact I've talked to judges who were involved in conferences which were convened specifically to train these judges how to deal with this issue in the courtroom. All right, so it wasn't very long before people who had these perfected private, non-judicial, commercial processes completed were being attacked, as you would imagine. Okay, they were being attacked. This whole thing had to be nipped in the bud. Some people went to jail, and so the story goes. All right, so I know for a fact there are a lot of folks who have these affidavits of obligation and really know where to go with them. The end position of the government was such that if this process, even though it's completely private, legitimate, lawful, legal, and everything else, if this process, if this paperwork did not have a stamp of approval from a judge, it was declared a false lien, which was entirely incorrect and false. That was the false part of it, calling it a false lien. And nonetheless, that's the position that the courts have taken. Now, we have come across and developed a way to not only get the courts to give their stamp of approval, but once that happens, we've developed a means to monetize that. Okay? Once we have the court approval. That's the bottom line. I'm not going to get into details. It's quite sensitive. It's highly confidential. We'll save those for only those who really have a need to know. All right, so if you've got a perfected affidavit of obligation, you've completed the process on these, so-called commercial liens, then we could probably talk and share some more details with you. Okay? Now, with this in mind, let me shift my message now to those of you who perhaps don't have a perfected process, but you've been damaged. You've been steamrolled by the court. You've been abused by court officials, prosecutors, judges, law enforcement, investigative agencies, you name it. We know there's a lot of good people in these agencies that are trying to do the right thing, but let's face it, they're outnumbered with corrupt jugheads that are out looking to advance their own career and fatten up their pocketbook a little bit. All right? So there's an awful lot of damage that has been done to thousands and thousands, if not more, people across not only the USA, but really worldwide. And the beautiful thing about this affidavit of obligation process is that it's based on commercial law, which is universal. It's private, it's extrajudicial, meaning we don't have to use the courts to perfect the process. This is a simple commercial process, much like sending out a bill to somebody and them agreeing to pay it. That's what this is. We send a bill to somebody saying, hey, you damaged me, and we get them to agree to pay. Crazy as it sounds, they will agree to pay perhaps millions of dollars of damages for the injuries they have caused. And the method used for that, it's called tacit procuration. We're going to procure their agreement tacitly. In other words, their silence will be consent. In law, failure to object is fatal. And when you have the opportunity to object, you must do it. Failing that, your silence is acquiescence. These are maxims of law, and you probably are very well aware of that. All right? So, that being the case, with this process that we have for monetization, it becomes very interesting, and now people can attempt to get recompense for the damages that have been caused and not have to hire a lawyer, because you can do this yourself. You need to study. There are templates. There's other sample paperwork you can follow, but you need to understand how this works. You need to have some guidance on how to get the court's final stamp of approval. And then, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's say, for example, you had damages of $20 million. If you were actually awarded a judgment by the court for that amount, what would you do with it? Would you be comfortable bringing that into your own personal bank account? Would your personal banker be willing to help you with that? Would you be willing to have that kind of money exposed to all of the predators that are out there? And you know red flags would be going up everywhere. Anyway, I don't need to talk to you about the dangers and the risks of bringing that kind of funds into your own personal account, which has never seen anything like, let's just say, $20 million. We have clients right now that have claims well over $50 million. Now today, I've been talking to the private banker. The country that I'm in is not a part of the EU, so that's a plus. EU and the United States basically have become what the Soviet Union was 30 years ago. And it's kind of a joke around here. I'm in the Caucasus region, and they joke that in the old days, the Soviets were the communists and the Americans were for freedom. So the story goes, right? And now it's just reversed. People go to Russia for freedom, and they're escaping from the USA. Anyway, that's we won't go down that rabbit trail. But my point is that we've cleared the way to have these funds received in an offshore private venue. The bankers are very open-minded, very willing to deal with the situation, and there's a trust scenario involved. There's various things involved, and we're not going to, again, get into the details right now, but you can understand that the path has been cleared for this to work. All right? All it's going to require from you are two things. One, you're going to need to be a global entrepreneur member of the Lighthouse Law Club, and perhaps we can help you with this, but you're going to need to have probably just a little bit of help from a paralegal to draft some very simple documents, standard daily documents that they see, and perhaps just guide you through the process just a little bit. Paralegal would be my preference. You could even use an attorney as a consultant, but he's not going to sign anything, he's not going to represent anything, he's not going to appear, he's just in the back room providing some guidance and some consulting. Okay? So those are the two things you're going to need: global entrepreneur membership and some paralegal help. And again, we can probably help with that if you need it, but you've got the choice to find your own if that's your preference. Okay? So this is extremely good news. Why? Because now those who have these processes perfected have an avenue to go down to take these, to put them into force, to enforce them. And wouldn't that send a message to the status quo very nicely? That the people are in charge here, and crooks and criminals, corrupt officials had better watch their P's and Q's. All right? So remedy is one thing. Compensation fits right in with that. And now, with this avenue open, those who have damages that have been incurred have the ability to begin a process and know that they've got some place to go with it. All right? So that's the crux of the message. I hope you take that as good news. I can certainly see this funding a lot of good work that we all are aware of that needs to be done, and I really believe that this will help turn things around, at least in some corners. for some people. Probably on a broader scale than that, but we'll leave it at that. So, that's the message for tonight. I hope you take it as good news, and I hope you can benefit. We'll look forward to hearing from you. Contact us at the Lighthouse Law Club if you want to get started with the Global Entrepreneur Membership and get started on this process. All right? Great. Take care, have a good night, and God bless.